Content warning for you to consider.
Unfortunately, family groups aren't as much together. Mums and dads and so forth have long hours to work. There's a death by suicide. There's so many people left behind. And there's some varying statistics and numbers out there from 150 up to sort of 450 of the numbers that I've seen with the number of people that are left behind. So if you just take, for example, a young fella that might die by suicide, death by suicide, school teachers, friends at school, the bus driver that drops them off, the sporting coach, all this peripheral network around this young fella's life, all those people are affected.
Then what happens to the parents?
Mums and dads are the same. Mums and dads are just as addicted to the online platforms as what the kids are.
Young people need your help. Today's guest, Ben, brings the experience and insights that will help you show up better in life, in business, and in the way you impact others.
That's when the weeds grow. That's when those Andrew Tate and other influencers pop up. Jake Paul smacking down whatever he's drinking.
Yeah.
It's very easy to see why you can be influenced, and it makes you feel great for the first hour. 3 hours later, you're gone. So what do? They go another one, and then they go another one.
Ben, thank you so much for making time to have a conversation. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
I appreciate everything you do at Men's Link, and I want to get into a bit of a deeper conversation. When I look at stats, when I look at numbers, when I look at research, it doesn't paint a very good picture. The suicide rates seem to be really high. If you break that down for me, what does that all mean? And what's at stake if we don't act now?
Wow, that's a deep question to start with. What does it all mean? Look, I think, unfortunately, death by suicide has been with us since the dawn of time. It's only recently that we've become nuanced enough or sophisticated enough to actually pull the stats together. I'm not entirely sure in my brief learnings of the industry that our stats are accurate and deep enough. So it's very hard to pull anything more than just a cursory glance at what the numbers are to determine certain areas of death by suicide. As I said, any death by suicide is just a tragedy, no matter what, who, when, male, female, young, old. I mean, it's terrible at any stage. So what does it actually mean? I'm not sure we entirely know that yet. But what I do know is that we have to continue to work on doing something about it. And how we, certainly from a Men's Link perspective, what we think is it's at that base level. So educating young guys for us or young people, providing counselling when needed, and that pathway of mentorship. If we can do those basic things, like they're really basic things. If we can do those really basic things for young guys in particular, we think we've got a chance to try and modify their journey as they go forward.
What's at stake for us, Ben, from what you have seen from a society level, even if we look at, young guys in sport, young guys being part of the social fabric, what's at stake?
Well, I think, what's at stake for us is, unfortunately, when there's a death by suicide, there's so many people left behind. And there's some varying statistics and numbers out there from 150 up to sort of 450 of the numbers that I've seen with the number of people that are left behind. So if you just take, for example, a young fella that might die by suicide, death by suicide, school teachers, friends at school, the bus driver that drops them off, the sporting coach, all this peripheral network around this young fella's life, all those people are affected and affected deeply. And unfortunately, all you have to do is attend a funeral or memorial service for a young person or any person that has died by suicide, and you see that ecosystem of a person, and it's devastating. It's certainly not something to be. It's devastating. It's not something to be proud of. That's for sure. And all those people are very stoic and very thoughtful at the time, and very reflective on what they could have done. And I think sort of goes back to my messaging with MensLink. What can we do? We can educate, we can mentor, and we can counsel young people.
But when I did some research into your background, I can see that you worked with Olympic athletes chasing gold. Looks like you're on a bigger mission now with what you're doing with MensLink. Why, if I ask you, did you take up the role you have at MensLink? What was the driving force behind that?
Now, I've thought quite a bit about that, particularly being at MensLink now. The truth is that Australia, in particular Canberra, has given me so much as a person. Just an amazing opportunities were availed of me. Growing up, I grew up in Sydney on the northern beaches. It was a pretty rough place in those days, but the opportunities were still availed to me. So great public school education, went through to year 12, local primary school, local high school in the same block type thing. Rode my bike to school every day. We played sport after school. We had music. We had everything that was available of an education that enabled me to be engaged in a community and enabled me to be the person or the man that I am today. And, I certainly reflect back. Every afternoon was playing cricket in summer, footy in winter, swimming later in the afternoon. We had tennis courts, we had squash courts, we had mates, we rode bikes, we had water close to us, we went fishing. We did all these sorts of things that kept me engaged in productive and community-style activities. That sort of manifested out for me to be pretty good at sport. So for me, being good at sport, it availed me on my education. So I was able to go to the United States and go to university on a scholarship for swimming. So that's how I got my university education. That manifested out into coming back to Canberra, being at the Australian Institute of Sport, and starting my professional career in teaching and coaching and sports management. It's a dream. You look back on some of the opportunities that I've been presented with and some of the ones that I sort of took with both hands and engaged in, I'm very thankful for. So towards the back end of my professional working career, I was like, how do I give back? How do I avail other young people that opportunity that I had? And so opportunity like MensLink certainly was something that took my interest. And I was fortunate enough they believed in that too. Yeah.
But if we unpack some of those things, explain to me what you mean by you grew up in a rough neighborhood. Yeah, what does that mean?
Northern beaches of Sydney in the late 70s, early 80s were pretty rough. Nowadays, so we're in 2005, 2020s. It's a very high end and very glossy suburbs, and it all looks. It was very working class where I grew up. We grew up not far from where the Manly Sea Eagles, Manaringa Sea Eagles play. That was an industrial area. It's like it's akin to putting the stadium at Fishwick. Like it was all pretty rough stuff back in those days. Very working class. That's just what it was. I didn't actually really realize that at the time. That was life for me. And that's where all my mates lived. So there wasn't anything that I realized at the time, but looking back at it, it was a pretty rough place to grow up, northern beaches of Sydney.
You also mentioned the different range of sporting activities you did. That also tells me that, you can hang with different groups. You can...
No, I can tell you I was a really crap football player. There's no doubt. Rugby union is where we sort of started, and that the school game morphed into rugby league, unbeknown to us. But I was no good at that. And come summer, cricket, I was marginally better at cricket and quite enjoyed it. But yeah, that wasn't going anywhere. So luckily for me, it was more around endurance sports, and swimming and riding and running, not so much, but yeah, always school cross countries and all those sorts of things. But it was really the availability of it. We could try it. We could have a crack at everything. I was even, unfortunately, in the band with the trumpet, I think.
Right.
Yeah, so, and quite obviously I was no trumpet player.
The availability of sport, I think, still exists. But what in your mind has changed now? I don't think children do as much sport.
I wouldn't just say sport, the opportunity of doing anything. Again, I go back to my days. We also had the local Scouts and Guides Hall right next to us. So I think it was every Thursday night we went to Scouts and learned how to build bonfires and all these sort of other skills that were just part of us growing up. Those opportunities are still available today, but they're just a little more difficult. Society's more spread out. Unfortunately, family groups aren't as much together. Mums and dads and so forth have long hours to work. So it's a very difficult thing for people to get to. And certainly in my experience at Men's Link, that's what it's sort of showing me. There's sort of a bit of a disconnect from community for numerous reasons.
Ben, if we take you back to that time, with the wisdom and the experience you have now, what's one of those lessons that you learned then that you still carry with you today?
For me, Avon, I'd probably say something like the discipline, and discipline just in everyday life, really, is probably the biggest lesson that I was able to be gifted from all those opportunities. And it still manifests out in my life today. I'm still an early riser. I still like to be in the office by 7. I'll work through until we need to work through. That's just my nature. And I'm very, very lucky with that. And that's probably what I've been gifted from those opportunities.
You spoke about families being spread. You spoke about stress on families.
Yeah.
When I look at the numbers, the number of young men growing up in families that might not have dad around for a variety of reasons, that number seems to be increasing also. Is that something you're seeing at Men's Link, and what's some of the impact of that you're seeing?
Again, I'll probably go back to, we're only just starting to identify that problem because the stats are now being kept. So we're starting to understand it. I'm sure that since the dawn of time, there's been single parent households. There's no doubt about that through various reasons. I mean, if you really reflect back to the war years, there'd be multiple upon thousands of single parent households, unfortunately. So I don't believe it's a new phenomenon. It's just we're counting it now. What does it actually mean? It's tough. It's tough on those single parents, predominantly from what we see, mums. It's a tough gig. And I was just recently in a directors meeting of the other leaders of the not-for-profit, large not-for-profits here in Canberra. And the general vibe and talking to those directors was around the housing. Housing affordability is one thing, but actually just the lack of housing. So when people are not given that basic right to actually have a house, let alone afford a house, it makes it a very difficult starting point, I guess, is really what comes out of that. And if you're not availed the opportunity to either purchase a house or rent a house or be given some safe haven to call home, it's not an easy gig at all. So, I reflect back to, I was given everything in terms of sport and so forth, but my parents' house, all the sorts of things that everybody wants and needs.
Yeah. And I like the framing that you said that, look, single parent houses have existed for a long, long time. Because a lot of the time people go, that's a new phenomenon. I'm like, maybe not.
No.
I also did some research to go, Is it just a developed world phenomenon? And I was looking at a famous comedian going around called Trevor Noah, who's from South Africa, who wrote this book called Born a Crime, where he was born during the apartheid, where somebody with lighter skin shade couldn't get married to somebody with a darker skin shade. And that was his mom and dad. So he couldn't hang out with mom and dad. Then I was also doing more research to find out, so the absence of the father figure can have implications on a young child growing up. I grew up with my father passing away when I was 4 years old. So I know, and I've lived experience with some of those challenges. But I also then researched more on this person I was researching, going, oh, so his mother remarried, and the person his mother remarried was very much an alcoholic, not all the time, was apparently, the story goes, a wonderful father. The kid was very anxious because the kid knew from the sound of the father entering the house whether he was drunk or whether he was going to be in a good mood. Trevor Noah was 25, 26 when his younger brother called and said, Dad shot mom in the head. And there's family violence also for families staying together. Seems like young men are growing up in a world that's really so challenging that some of their formative years are getting challenged. Is that something you're seeing also in Australia, in Canberra?
Well, I think two parts to the answer for this one for me, Avon. So I was fortunate enough to spend a number of years with the Brumbies rugby union team. And was able to travel to South Africa over a three-year period. So plenty of trips to South Africa and witnessed exactly what you're talking about in terms of just the standard of living and what's acceptable and what's normal over there. In addition to that, I also got to know some of the South African players that came here to Canberra in search. That at the start, they were looking to be the best rugby players, but when you unpick that a little bit, they were in search of a better life. They wanted to come to Australia because they knew it was safer. I certainly don't want to go into names, but I know some pretty horrific stories of those young fellas when they were talented junior rugby players, from kidnapping and some pretty heavy-duty crimes against those fellas because they were seen as white elite sportsmen that might have a little bit of money, so they were kidnapped to hold at ransom. They managed to get out of South Africa via sport, come to Australia, and those fellas now live very productive and fruitful careers here in Australia, and good fellas. It still astounds me, and it still makes me grateful for, number one, what we do have here in Australia, even though there's quite a little bit of unrest, might not be agitation at the moment, but we're still very grateful for we should be very grateful what we have here in Australia. And I feel very proud of sporting organisations like the Brumbies and the people that set it up before me and have come after me, that continue to foster and help young men come out to Australia to be the best they can be. I think that's something really special. As in terms of here in Canberra now, yeah, absolutely. It's a really tough place for some young fellas to grow up. It's not a cheap place to live. It's difficult to get some jobs that have the income needed to try and survive in Canberra.
If we were to zoom in more on the nature of the challenges faced by children and young adults, what's the nature of some of the challenges they face?
So probably one of the biggest issues that we see at Men's Link, and it's evolving, and we've created some programs to help combat this or cater for this, is the disconnection, and it's the disconnection brought on by the use of social media and the internet. So what we normally see in young fellas, the way that it pans out is the gaming, online gaming becomes a big part of their life, very easy to access. So if you're play this scenario out in your mind. Mum, it might be a single parent household, so mum's probably working. Young fellas come home from school. Everybody's carrying a laptop now, but nowadays no phone. Locks himself in the room, gets involved with some online gaming, and that draws him into that world, which is all fine if it doesn't become obsessive. And it's like anything in life. It's all fine so long as it doesn't become obsessive. What we know from that obsessive behavior is it takes you away from the other community aspects of your life. So it does take you away from your sporting groups or the jobs that mum might have left for you, or connecting with your mates after school, or your first job at Macca's, or whatever it happens to be. You get obsessed with their gaming. And we certainly see young fellas move into the more dangerous areas of the online gaming. So descending into the world of influencers, the world of online gambling, and the world of online porn. And so you add all those things together as a 14, 15, 16-year-old. There's no boundaries around it. It's very easy to see why young guys become disconnected. They'll stay up all night doing those things. So come 8 o'clock the next morning when mum's like, hey, Avon, can you get up? Time to go to school. Let's get going. No, it's not happening. And so that disconnect just manifests out. So then you don't go to school. So then you sleep all day. So if you're sleeping all day, you're not going to school. Guess what happens tonight? You're up gaming again tonight. Just keeps going, just keeps going, just keeps going like that. That's the disconnect that we see. So for us at Men's Link, it's really important that we talk to our young guys and we're honest about it. And we give them the knowledge they need of what's happening behind the scenes of these games, social media, whatever device they happen to be using. So the algorithms behind it. And we all know that it's the algorithms and so forth are pretty clever at how they draw people in. I'm, as most people, quite good at scrolling through my Instagram and so forth, looking at things I like. And then what do you know? You look at the things you like and more of that stuff comes up. And so you scroll a little bit more. It's very addictive. They're very good at it. I'd hate to think where I would have been as a 14, 15, 16-year-old with mobile phone in my pocket. It's a very tough thing to do.
From an age group, and I know you work with that age of young men, but from an age group, are you seeing these behaviors from 14, 15, 16-year-olds or younger group?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, we are seeing it dropping down. So we do have some programs for years 5 and 6 in primary school. The ideals behind the programs are similar, or the curriculum is similar. It's just structured to each age group. So if we talked about our Unplugged program, which is the conscious use of social media, we have a year 5 and 6 module, years 7, 8, and 9, then 9, 10, and we're sort of just getting ready to create one for young tradies. So those guys that have finished up school at some time, whether it's year 10, 11, or 12, and then moved into a trade, because that's a whole different little world there for themselves. So we want to cater for those fellas too, because we acknowledge and we see that they're a really important part of starting their life in the workforce. And if they can start out that first couple of years well, the chances 10 years in or 20 years in, they're going to be a lot better equipped. If they're going through that apprenticeship or trade in the first 2 or 3 years and really struggling with it, the chances they're not going to finish that are pretty great. So we want to make sure we give them the tools to. And places like Master Builders Association, Master Plumbers Association are really on top of that with this too. So it's a big breakthrough, I think, for us as an organisation.
Building further into the work that you're doing with social media, if we break it down, Ben, what are you seeing at the younger ages? I know there's lots of work around the social media bill to make sure that, kids under the age of 13 don't have access to it. Kids are resilient. Yeah. Kids find ways to do what they need to do. Yeah. You might block social media, like you very rightly touched. There'll be stuff that you can access through online games and other ways. what more do we as a society need to know and do better?
Wow. Well, I'll start with gambling
Mhm.
because that's the easiest one to pick out. If you can cast your mind to any sporting events that you might have watched on any media platform, whether it's free to air, TV, pay TV, YouTube, whatever it happens to be, you'll see that the online online gambling ads are very persuasive. They draw young people in. And if you look at, they've obviously got a massive budget. They know what they're writing, and they talk about betting with mates, and they have a couple of mates there, and then inevitably there's a girl in the photo and they're drinking a beer, but it's all about the betting. And they're tapping into what young guys want, which is to be with some mates, okay? But they're selling product, which is gambling. So they're it's very cleverly marketed. And quite frankly, it's terrible, really, when you look at it, because those 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old fellas who are probably sitting, still might be with a family member or with some mates watching a sporting event, that messaging is just continually bombarded, and it's all the time. And they do it in different methods. So as I said, that you can gambling with mates, but they've also got some great ads that are quite comical too. You have a bit of a laugh about it. It's like, oh, that's pretty funny, and it is. But the messaging's still there. How do you have a good time? You have a good time by betting. Nah, we can't be giving that message to young fellas. So, that's probably one that you can see really easily, but there's all that through society.
And like, even if you look at, the world's most famous YouTuber, Mr. Beast gamifies everything.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic for what he's doing. That's fantastic for his audience. And he might actually take that money and build wells in Africa or stop child labor with his Feastable chocolates. But what is that doing to the dopamine hit that these young boys and girls keep getting all the time?
What's the Australian fellow that does it? Is it Adrian?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know his system.
Yeah.
But he's very clever at it too, because it's essentially online gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Is what he's selling, and a system people buy into. And then you see him on free-to-air news at supermarkets paying for people's groceries. So it's like, is he robbing Peter to pay Paul, or is it a Robin Hood type scenario? What's actually going on here? And he's really, just camouflaging what he's doing to make himself look like a good fella, which I'm sure he's probably a good fella, but his business might not be so good to us.
Then what happens to the parents? What happens to the parents when you hear your child should not be on social media or gaming throughout the night? We've all been a parent.
Yeah.
We've all been kids also.
Yeah.
How much do you listen to your parent when your parent comes and says, "Hey, stop social media"?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, some part of the answer to this question is mums and dads are the same. Mums and dads are just as addicted to the online platforms as what the kids are. You go anywhere in a social setting and everybody's got their phones out. Everyone's scrolling for the really important message that they might get from somewhere, and they're not engaged in that moment. I had the great experience. There's two parts of the experience. Great experience last night of going to a trivia night, community level trivia night. So 140 people knowing they want to be involved in the community. So trivia night, putting back in, having a great night. Even at trivia night, you still see everybody on their phones, checking their messages or whatever they happen to be doing, checking the football scores. So you can't break away from it. Mums and dads are very similar, and it's a very conscious effort not to do that. Is there an answer? I'm not really sure.
Are there other activities like sport, like trivia nights, like community engagement that can engage these young minds differently?
Yeah, look, I think the real messaging here is we want not only young people, but all people to remain active. One of the things that I've worked out through my journey is being active is a really good stress release, and it keeps you engaged. So walking for me has been quite meditative recently, and it's also starts good conversations with people. So if you choose to walk with a friend, and more than just walk to the local shops, you want to actually go for a decent walk and make time for it. You'll find that meditative effect, but you don't have a chance to be online. And then if you're walking with somebody, it's very much easier to have a conversation when you're walking beside somebody rather than sitting and looking straight at somebody. And that conversation doesn't have to be deep and meaningful, it just can be a light general conversation. But what you find is that frees you, that gives you a bit of bandwidth, gives you the buffer that you need to meet the next onslaught, whatever that happens to be. It gives you that ability to rebound from those sorts of things and accept those sorts of things, I think.
Ben, with your experience working with young men in sporting teams and other settings, what are some of the telltale signs that you can see when a young boy is going down the path of either social media addiction or just withdrawal from community?
Yeah. Well, it's important to note here whether a person is a sports person, normal person, a workaholic, whatever happens, everybody's the same. Like, there's still people. People ask me that question all the time. What's the difference between working in a high-performance sporting environment and working at a community organisation like Mentorship? There's some nuances to it, but the people are the same. Everyone's the same. So they want to be treated with respect and dignity and communicate correctly and all the basic values that we expect. You definitely see that withdrawal on a consistent basis. So I think when I walked in this morning, I said to both of you guys about the basketball team that I saw downstairs. And I only took a quick glance, but there was probably 12, 14 of them there. 8 of those guys were engaged with each other, talking about what's going on, when's the bus coming, what have you done? Oh no, I forgot this, which is all pretty standard stuff. And then there was 2 or 3 that were sitting off the side, scrolling on their phones. Now, once you get to know them a little bit more, it could have been some fella checking that his, mum was going okay and everything was fine, but then the other fella could have been checking something else. So it's about knowing the people and knowing what their trigger or their tipping points happen to be and whether they're becoming engaged, disengaged, not wanting to interact with dinners, family events, missing school, missing work. That's probably one of the things we see from the young tradies when the fellas start missing work. What's sort of behind missing work? Is it some bullying that's going on at work? Is there something going on at home? Is it a substance type thing? Are they getting on the beers too often and not being able to deal with it? Energy drinks are a massive one. We see that every time we go out. 7, we commonly do these talks. They're termed toolbox talks in the trade. 7 or 7:30 on a Wednesday morning is traditionally where they are. And unfortunately, you'll see a lot of the young fellas just sitting with their energy drinks already. And the energy drinks are the massive 470 ml monster type ones. That's going to be a tough way to start the day, because I can tell you, if you're putting one of those down at 7:30 in the morning, by 11 o'clock, you're going to be out of juice. So there's all those little telltales depending on how well you know the young fellas and what instance that those young fellas are in. But you need to be aware. Yeah, it's about being present.
And energy drinks are marketed as this miracle drug.
Yeah.
And they're seeing other people in their environment downing multiples of them.
Yeah.
We're seeing massive figures like KSI, Logan Paul selling Prime and other energy drinks.
Yeah, that's shocking too. I don't know if you've tasted them. I've been fortunate enough to be through the sport of motor racing, and Red Bull is a major supplier of drinks to motor racing. I happened to be in that environment with copious whole wall of fridges of Red Bull. And everyone sort of tries it. Yeah, you're happy to try it, but you don't want to be drinking that stuff too often. Yeah.
How does a young fella stuck on some of these energy drinks?
Yeah, you think about it. If they've been up all night gaming, they're a bit disconnected with school and they're stuck on energy drinks, and all they're seeing on their social medias is Jake Paul smacking down whatever he's drinking.
Yeah.
It's very easy to see why you can be influenced, and it makes you feel great for the first hour. 3 hours later, you're gone. So what do? They go another one, and then they go another one. So energy drinks are probably one of the real root causes of disconnection. Maybe that's probably a pretty big call, but yeah.
It also flies under the radar so easily. We get caught up in substance abuse, or whether it's alcoholism or smoking or vaping, and those things get lots of attention. But for someone who doesn't have the money to go see a dietitian and all of those things, what are some of the...
And they're expensive too.
Yeah.
They're expensive, yeah.
What are a couple of tips somebody can do to get off energy drinks?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish I had the 100% answer, because we'd all make a lot of money if we had the answer to that one. But really, the best energy drink for you to use is water. And water in Australia, Canberra in particular, straight out of the tap. Stop drinking bottled water. Just drink water out of the tap. It's free, and it's the best thing that you can be doing. And particularly if you're consuming too many energy drinks, you actually want to have some hydration to flush some of that stuff out. So if you are stuck on energy drinks, you might go 1 for 1. So if you're having an energy drink, the next one you need to go is water, and then energy drink. And then you might go 2 waters, 1 energy drink, until you're sort of weaned off the energy drinks. Or you're having an energy drink every once in a while, which is not a problem. If you're just having, 1 or 2 a week, I'm not a dietitian. I don't know the studies behind it. I'm just going to guess 1 or 2 a week's probably okay, compared to 3 a day. If you're having 3 or more a day, you probably need to be getting off that.
For somebody who's going, I'm getting a lot from my energy drink. Tell me, from your sporting background, do all sportsmen get wings when they have energy drinks, or are they smarter than that?
Yeah. No, they don't. Yeah, because a lot of the trick to that high performing sport is actually to be calm under pressure. So if you're loaded with energy drinks, you're very hyper vigilant. You're very nervous, or energy orientated, and you're not making the correct decisions under pressure or under stress. And it's not just one decision. If you're going to watch any of the football codes, all those leading players make multiple decisions, minute after minute after minute, for a 90-minute game. It's an amazing load that needs to be carried. So if you're going to be hyped up on energy drinks, you're eventually going to have the crash from the energy drink. So you're going to be hyper vigilant, and then you're going to go on the downside of that. And that's not what you want during game day. You see the best people, the best sports people, best business leaders, the best people in media, they're very stable, very stable. So when you're making those critical decisions, you want to be as stable as you can be. Less emotion.
Let's pivot to another type of influencer on social media that might be targeting that age group of the tradies or even college kids. Think about people like Andrew Tate, who go, there's a huge gap in masculinity. I'm going to tell you how to be a man, and I'm going to tell you how to be a strong man. And in that, there's lots of toxicity.
Yeah.
Are you seeing things like that in our community also?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just go back to your question. Not might be, they are targeting. Like, they're really smart business people. There's no doubt about that. These fellas are smart. And they are targeting our young guys, especially young guys that are disenfranchised. They know who they're targeting and what they're trying to get out. It's a really compelling message when you're talking about a bit of fitness, a bit of things that a lot of young fellas like, their cars and all these sorts of things. How do you become rich? How do you become buff? How you beach muscles? There's some discipline about it, and they talk a great message, but it's the undercurrent. It's the tone that they speak about other people. It's the tone that they go about their day-to-day business, which is what you don't want, young guys. And unless we're us from Men's Link, but other organisations are actually educating and teaching young guys, that's not the way that we want to think. If you're leaving that space void, that's when the weeds grow. That's when those Andrew Tate and other influencers pop up, because young guys are looking for things. We know they're online the whole time, and they're looking for that dopamine hit of something better and better and better as they go. So if we're not filling the void with good, honest, correct conversation, you're going to find that sort of thing is going to come in.
How do you fill the void? Because when I look at these people, Andrew Tate has his shirt off most of the time. He looks fit. Yeah. He looks like he has some discipline to maintain. Yeah. He looks like he's got some discipline to maintain that fitness. Yeah. He's got a cigar. It speaks of children, speaks of wives.
He's very good.
Speaks of Lamborghinis. Look at his brother. Looks taller, sleeker, does courses on how to earn money faster, how to dress better, how to smell good as a man. They're not bad messages. It's the undercurrent. Yeah. That's an issue. How do you tell a young man that this is not what you should be doing all the time?
Wow. Well, number one, you're correct. I mean, that's exactly what they do. And that undercurrent is exactly what we want to try and avoid. And I think we as a society just need to embrace our young fellas and be honest with our young fellas. There's nothing wrong with embracing and being honest and trying to educate. I mean, that the way that we can prevent all these issues is through education. How do we make a better man? We start with young fellas. And that's a very generic black and white term. You can't make a better man. But what we do know is that by educating our young guys, by counseling our young guys, and by mentoring our young guys, the chances of them becoming better fellas is enhanced. There's no doubt about that. So how do we make a better man? Start with a young fella. How do we combat these influencer style people? We need to educate. We need to embrace, and we need to encourage our young guys that there's a pathway. Sure, you can listen to those things. It's no different than when we're talking about our social media. In the year 5 and 6 group with the social media stuff, we talk about it's okay, fellas, to go, or we use the example, it's okay to go to McDonald's and have a Big Mac and a fries and a Coke. It's okay to do that. But you don't do 10 in a row, do you? Oh, no, we don't do that. No way. It's the same as social media. No problems. Go on for an hour, understand what it is, but you don't stay up all night and do 10 hours. So you just draw those examples out and you guide and lead and support young guys in the choices they make.
I've heard of a program called Silence is Deadly.
Silence is deadly.
And when I look at that, I'm going, I was a young man once speaking. It's tough. We don't speak out about our problems. I don't want to sound weak. Yeah. How do you get young men to speak?
Yeah, Silence is Deadly, obviously, as you know, is one of our benchmark programs. It's actually the program that our previous CEO, Martin Fisk, started at Men's Link in 2012. It's around help-seeking behaviour. It's teaching young guys to actually speak to somebody about the problems that they're having. It's really important. And one of the big things that we're trying to work on now is what do you do when somebody does reach out to you and say, I'm not going that well. Avon, I'm struggling a bit, mate. What do you reckon? So that's an extension to the Silence is Deadly program, which is been quite fascinating too. And I think that'll be a really helpful a couple of simple lines will be really helpful for people out in our community to.
How do you get some of the young men that still perceive that, sharing some of their experiences doesn't make them look tough and macho in their community groups?
Yeah. Well, the way that we go about our awareness and advertising, you'll see, is through the Canberra Raiders, so the local National Rugby League team, who are currently on a very successful run through the season, so really high profile. So we're talking big, masculine footy players, commonly of Islander descent too, so different ethnic backgrounds, really important to us. And we get those guys to talk about sharing their feelings and opening up. And so that's just role modeling. That's classic role modeling. And it's really important for us to show that out in our community. When we go out and speak, so my education people are of all different backgrounds. They look different than each other. They go out, so it just creates that perception to young guys. Everyone's different. It's okay to be different, and it's okay to talk about it. So we work really hard on some of that messaging behind the scenes about how we go about it, the visuals that we're putting out in the community, the acceptance we are. It's a really critical area for help-seeking behaviour is what it is. We want young guys to ask.
Do you have any young guys? I know Men's Link is not very old, but I do you have any other young guys that have been through the program that are now mentors or aspire to work with you guys closely?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I reckon some of my proudest moments in the last year or so have been when we're out at events and doing things, and fellas just come up and just shake your hand and go, "Thanks, mate. You really helped me out when I needed it." And that's it. Then off they disappear into the distance. I speak at times about it's hard to know how much difference we're making. It's like, well, what are the numbers? Like you can't really have black and white numbers. We've got a pretty good idea what's the impact we're making. We saw 14,000 young guys last year. We did this so many schools. We made a difference here, but you're still not really. That's just the numbers. You're not. What's the impact we're having? That's a really difficult question. And we've been trying to figure that out. But one of my board members said to me, "You know what, mate? Don't worry about trying to figure it out. It's all the ones that you don't know that you've helped. And you'll never know. You'll never figure that out. You just got to rest easy to know that you've made a difference." And I was like, that doesn't sit very well, because I'm from this sporting background where it's all about the numbers. Whether it's winning or losing, the numbers. It's all about the numbers. And that didn't sit well with me until, as I describe, you go out to events and blokes just go, "Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it." Off they go. And so all these people that you've helped and that you're never going to know help are out there. So I feel really proud of that. I know because we talk about it in staff meetings now. Lots of guys reach out and tell us that. We do have plenty that come back and help in a voluntary basis, and we do have a lot of fellas that come back in that have had a great experience with us and then come back out to be mentors with us in our 2-year program. So that's pretty gratifying too. But that would be a very small number compared to the guys that are out there. Or the mums. We always have mums. We were just recently at the Raiders. Mums coming past. You guys saved it. Thank you.
Looking at how technology is evolving, AI is meant to be helping us, but it also has lots of phenomenon when you keep looking at what's happening in society. A lot of the time, men do not like rejection. So they're leaning towards having AI avatars as girlfriends or partners because they're not going to reject you. How much of a problem does that sound like to you?
Well, it certainly sounds like a problem. There's no doubt about that. We're certainly aware of it at Men's Link. It's something that we've been discussing. The whole suite of AI issues or opportunities that we have. One of those would be what you've described. There's lots of things that we've been discussing. I don't have the answers for those yet because we want to be For us at MensLink, one of the evolutions that we've had is becoming a evidence-based organization rather than a lived experience. So the evidence on some of the things that you're talking about with AI is probably just not there. It's sort of all lived experience at the moment. So we're aware. Do I think it's going to be a big problem? Yeah, absolutely. What are we going to do about it? We're not entirely sure yet because we haven't seen the evidence behind it to create programs around that. But like everything in life, there's probably some negative experiences like you were describing. But for us, AI can also be a really useful tool. And we're starting to explore that now at MensLink, just like every other organization, about how we use it in a productive and safe manner. And particularly for someone like myself towards the back end of their career, how do we safeguard our organization in the future to use tools like this?
Looking at an older problem, when I see people talking about withdrawal, whether it's for young men or slightly older ages, there's a lot of porn addiction that happens there. That there's a lot of withdrawal there. There's a lot more comfortable, easy access to that type of material.
I think that's the real problem. It's the comfortable and easy access. And I speak quite openly about that. If you're about 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old young fella and your expectation is developed about a sexual relationship through Pornhub, if that's what your expectation is with your first sexual experience, we probably can all say it's not going to be like that, mate. So setting it, that easy access to porn sets up very unbelievably high level expectations on their first relationship and their first sexual experience. And as I said, it's probably not going to pan out that way. And that's going to lead to a whole lot of anxiety, frustration on a number of levels. So I think it's a real problem as we go forward. And we need to, organizations like us at MensLink that do education and counseling and mentoring, need to be aware and be honestly talking to young fellas about that. MensLink, we're not doing that at the moment. It's something I would love us to grow into over a period of time, but again, it needs to be evidence-based rather than hearsay. I mean, 15-year-old blokes are not going to take too well to an old fella like me coming in and talking to them about porn. It's just not going to work out that well. That's just a simple fact. So how do we have the evidence? As I said, we've worked really hard recently on developing the evidence-based approach to our Science is Deadly program. So help seeing behavior, our social media programs, all those sorts of things. So this is another one. We need the evidence and we need to develop programs to actually talk to young guys in a intelligent, mature manner.
Have your conversations with younger age men, some of them have they spoken out about having porn addictions or things like that? Have they tried to bring that conversation out when you speak with them?
So there's some privacy issues around this sort of thing. We certainly know in our counseling program there's some trends along that line. And probably it's more the online gambling at this stage. Young fellas seem to be a little more at ease to speak about their gambling habit than their porn habit. I suspect that they're probably both pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just sort of changing the subject a little bit, and again, there's confidentiality around this sort of thing, but there has been some instances where we're seeing a trend with online gambling and the use of Afterpay. So young fellas are pretty handy at what they do. They know how to do that, and they know they've got an Afterpay account, even though they're not of age. So you imagine that by the time they get out of high school, they're online gambling and they're using an Afterpay. So they're already in debt, essentially, through gambling, even before they've got a job.
Yeah.
That's not a real good start.
Yeah.
That's not a real good start. Now, as I said, there's confidentiality around this. But
how much does domestic violence or an unsafe home contribute to young men having behaviors, habits that aren't really good?
Again, the statistics around this are only newish, and they're becoming better. And again, we want to be an organization that's evidence-based. So as those statistics and that evidence becomes more reliable, so to speak, and we understand how to use that, we'll probably get a true picture of that. Anecdotally, you would say, yeah, absolutely. A tough home environment. I think I spoke about it before in terms of just safe housing availability, safe housing for a family group is really important to basic foundations of living. So we know that if there's not good quality housing available to young people or people in general, it's going to be tough. And that's where you see the use of alcohol and social media and all these sorts of things become a problem, which probably manifests out into that domestic violence type picture. There's lots of talk around domestic violence in terms of the crisis care. What do? We need more housing, all these sorts of things, which is exactly correct, and it's exactly right. 100% support that. But I go back to that point about how do we make better men, which is, it's a saying. You can't make a better man, but we start with young fellas. Okay, so we need to teach young fellas that's not the pathway. We need to mentor. We need to counsel young guys.
Looking back at your career working with elite athletes and in top-level sport, they're confident, they know what they're doing most of the time. But
you'll be surprised, that they struggle with exactly the same daily issues as everybody else. So anxiety, self-doubt, self-loathing, perceptions of themselves, they're normal people as well. Yeah.
In your role at Men's Link, has your perception of masculinity changed?
Oh, wow. No, I don't believe so. Yeah. No, I think your perception of masculinity as you mature just gets different nuances about it. It probably is not my role at Men's Link. I just think as I've matured and I realize the importance of mentoring and good men and the role that plays in masculinity is probably where I'm at on that a little bit more. It's probably not specifically the role at Men's Link. Even my role at Men's Link, I still have availed the access of some really fantastic mentors and leaders that I aspire to be. And I'm quite happy to shout it out as Mike Battinelli, who's our chair at Men's Link. 40-year career in the education system as a school principal towards the end of his career. He's a lovely gentleman, very calm, very articulate, very intelligent, just a brilliant mentor, not only for myself, but for the whole Men's Link organization. Somebody like that typifies masculinity to us.
You've spoken about custodianship of the community. Where does mental health play a part in all of that?
Well, custodian. So I've spoken about being custodian of Men's Link. My true goal for Men's Link is that it long surpasses me. I want, we're 23 years into it now. I want Men's Link to be around for another 23 years and 46 years and multiples from there. It needs to be for particularly Canberra and its surrounding community. So I see myself as the custodian. We're just trying to do the best job that we can to ensure that we provide the servicing to young guys here in Canberra. And I do want to make note of, we refer to young guys and young fellas all the time, but what we do know is that there's this ripple effect involved with what we do. So if a young fella's coming to see us for some counselling or some educational guidance or whatever we happen to be doing, and he goes home and he's actually just that little bit better at home. He's better to mum, to nan, to his auntie, to his sister, all the female role models, all the female people in his life. That's the ripple effect. we're making a difference to the mum's life. We're making a difference to the sister's life. And what we know with young guys is once they get a bit of positive reinforcement with that, once they get some confidence and feel better about that sort of thing, they'll take that out in the community. So they'll go into school, and the female school teachers, because we know that school teachers are, I think it's 80% of school teachers are female. So they're better in the school environment. There's girls in the school environment, so they're better to young ladies in the school environment. They're better when they go out to their first job, when they go to the coffee shop for their first job or Macca's for their first job. There's females involved with that too. So we're teaching young guys that ripple effect just makes them better. So yes, we are a gender-biased service, but we know that it helps everybody in the community. So you go back to that custodianship. What are we trying to do? How do we want that to be manifest out through our community? And, I just reflect on what I did last night in a community event with a trivia night. Just really good people putting back into their community. My wish was something like that as we go forward, is that we incorporate young people into those events. Because if you looked around the room, they were all, 40 to 75-year-olds, because they're the people that sort of have the time and the thought process that they want to put back. But think about the fact that if we had those people as grandparents, guardians, mentors, and we had young people coming into that sphere also and learning how to do that. We have to teach, we have to direct and mentor and put our arms around young people and teach them what to do.
How does Men's Link get stronger? So I've heard about some of the programs that Men's Link does. I've heard about the Great Walk. I've heard about lots of other things like that. How
You say you're doing the Great Walk this
year. How does Men's Link get stronger?
Well, that's a really good question, because I have a very clear saying, a very clear opinion on this. And to me, it's about making Men's Link champions. So any person that comes into our area of operations, so to speak, they're coming to an event, they're doing something with us. We want that person to learn a little bit more about Men's Link and understand, and then go out into the community as a Men's Link champion. So we want you to go out, and when you're coaching under 10 soccer team on Saturday morning, you know about Men's Link, you know about what we do. So if there's a young person that might be struggling, you know what to do. When you go into the workplace and people are talking about it, you go, no, I went to a Men's Link event. These guys do this. They're fantastic. So out in the community, I want more Men's Link champions. That's how we make it stronger. To me, it's not about the money. Okay. If you're going out into the community and you're asking for money first, the chances of being shot down are fairly high. If we're going out to the community with people that are becoming Men's Link champions, then we stand a better chance. That's how we come stronger.
And in your time, have you seen that advocacy growing, and where does it need to grow more?
That's a difficult one. I'm not entirely sure, and we don't have a clear policy around Men's Link being an advocacy group. There's lots of groups that are advocacy groups. We're actually a service provider, although we sell the good message. So the byproduct of our services is we are into the advocacy side of it. I think we need to be a little bit careful with how far we go down that track. There's lots of advocacy groups that are trying in this space, and for better or for worse, I'm not really sure it's accepted that well in society and community. So I think for us, how do we make ourselves stronger? How do we guarantee our long-term credibility? Is we continue to do the things we do really well. We continue to provide the service of young guys when they need it. We continue to make Men's Link champions, put those people out into the community. I think that's how we go about it. The advocacy side of it, yes, we have to dabble in it, because you're always advocating for funding. You're always advocating for establishment of services. That's a given. But I don't think we want to go out on a limb and be driving really hard from the top.
You've got great programs in schools. You've got your mentorship program. How do young men reach you?
Yeah. We want to make it simple. And quite frankly, we've sort of made it too hard over time. There's too many different avenues. How do I go about this? What do we do? So when we now go out to school, so essentially the best catchment we have is when we go out into schools and we provide an education program. As I said, 2024, I think we saw 14,000 young fellas in schools. They've got to be where we're advocating our services. So those young guys need to know. So we actually now, when we go out, we have a little brochure. It's got a QR code. So all the young fellow needs to do is click on the QR code, takes them directly to our website. The website then has a couple of different sections, whether you want some counseling, mentoring, or education, and click on those links, fill in the form, we get back to you, boom, off you go. So it's easy, but I want it to be easier. Yeah. I talk about, if we've seen young Avon on Wednesday in a year 10 Science is Deadly class, and he's sort of ruminating on the whole thing. It's like, man, I think I need to see a counsellor. It takes a while for you to, so 11 o'clock on a Friday night, you're sort of sitting in your room, you've got access to it. You go, you know what, I think next week I want to book in. And you hit book me now. I want that process to be easy. Yep, Tuesday, 11 o'clock, whatever times. Avon's coming in. Let's make that process easy. One thing I know about blokes is that if the process is not easy, it's not going anywhere. And it's like, oh, no, that was too hard. Oh, geez, I tried, but so we've missed it. And you only get that one opportunity. It's going to be a lot of time before young Avon goes, you know what, I'm going to go back and try. I've got a bit more courage this time, I'll go back and try and wade through that again. So it's incumbent upon us to make that process as easy and as comfortable as possible. And that's one of our goals as we go forward. So, yeah.
You spoke about courage. If I can't come to see a counselor alone, can I bring a friend?
Yep, absolutely.
Does that happen?
Not very often. But can we do it? Absolutely. That's my answer. Yes.
Because I'm also thinking of someone thinking, oh my God, like I'm scared to go.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking of the other side. The reason they might be coming alone is they're not really sure that they can share what they're going through with somebody else.
Look, I'm happy to share this. One incident that wasn't that long ago, we had a walk-in. So you don't often get walk-ins into the office for counselling. And his two mates and himself came in, they brought him in. He expressed a desire that he needs some counselling. So his mates marched in, it's not the right word, but directed him in. They came and saw us, and we got that young fella a counselling appointment right there. So we were lucky enough on that day that somebody was free, and they're like, no problems. My message to my people is the answer is yes. Don't dare say you're going on a break. It's like, no way. We've got a young fella here that's in need. Sure. Let's do it. So that was a really cool thing to see. He got counselling straight away, and I know that he's been back numerous times.
How do you build your team, Ben?
Yeah. It's. I think you just treat people as people. Yeah. In the industry that we're in, there's passion, there's love, there's true belief in what we're doing makes a difference. So you don't have to work on that side of it too much. You just have to be really supportive of what we do, really encouraging. And from my perspective, I want to build a really great organization that people want to work for and want to stay. Because that IP in the industry, you don't want to lose that after a 6 or a 12 months. You want people to stay for a long period of time, because that you become a specialist in your field. And how you do that? By actually doing it quite a long time. Yeah. So for me, it's really about building a place that people would like to be in.
And do your team have mental health supports or supports like that? Because I believe when you're a counselor, you also need some support to make sure you're your best self.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some really good safeguards in place for all our staff members. great place to work. I don't really want to go into it too much about what those safeguards actually are. Some are stipulated by the award, some are stipulated by us, some were put in place by previous management. So we've got a pretty good suite of how we surround ourselves with our people and support our people to do the best job they can.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you also have or is the network around community or around Canberra also getting stronger? If somebody comes to see you, but they need some other support, do you have agencies that you can reach out to?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just we refer that as our referral pathway. And so our referral pathways are through all sorts of different organizations and really strong. Again, I don't want to give specific examples. There's some privacy issues involved with that. But in my experience now, I'm in my third year, the people, when you reach out through that referral pathway, people are only too happy to help. And wherever that happens to be, from youth justice to homeless crisis services to education, medical. You think about all the areas that a young bloke could have a problem in. We've got pathways and networks and relationships with all those people and agencies. And I can't think off the top of my head where there's an example where whether they've been turned away or turned down.
Focusing on what I'm hearing, people saying, hey, there's lots of loneliness. And I go, on the surface, true there is. But when I speak with service personnel, and I had a good chat with Scott Lego on this podcast, and we spoke about life after the service, life after the military, and how you can be supported by lots of caring people, but you still feel lonely. I've spoken to Paralympic athletes on the podcast, like Jesse Angles, who says, it's fantastic to win and you get a medal and you're all pumped and you go back to your hotel room and you're all alone.
Yeah.
Explain to me what that loneliness feels like and how we can support somebody experiencing that.
I think a lot of those comments come from fellas that are entrenched in either sport or military, and that is their identity. You're in that, I come from a sport background and that is my identity, and you get very used to that cocoon and that bubble and that level of support. And even when you have downtime, you're not lonely. You're always doing something, or you're with somebody or thinking about something. Gracie Elvin, who is one of Canberra's most prestigious professional cyclists, female cyclists, now retired, a couple of years ago, said after her retirement, she's like, you get really used to the adulation and the cheering. It's something you do miss in the sporting field. So loneliness is certainly something when you step outside that realm, particularly for sports people. Definitely, I'm good friends with Ben Alexander from the Brumbies and Wallabies, now running for resilience. So we've got this great partner with Running for Resilience. A lot of their push is obviously around suicide, but it's also the acknowledgement that exercise and community brings people together. Come exercise with a mate, have a beer with a mate, have a drink with a mate afterwards. And a lot of it is around that loneliness. Because you can disconnect is one thing, but lonely is another thing. And I think society going forward is going to be more difficult with all the things that are going on. Social media, housing, job insecurity, the advent of AI, all these sorts of things will continue to disenfranchise or turn people into that loneliness. It's a big problem. We work really hard on trying to bring young fellas together. Even if it's, we just have a barbecue event. A lot of young guys haven't had that experience, just a barbecue. Just come for a barbecue, mate. Have a sausage sandwich, play a bit of basketball, play a board game, have a yarn. It's as simple as that.
In the last 3 years, have you seen numbers increase?
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Is it that Men's Link is getting better at getting the message out, or are we as a community getting a little lonelier?
Like, to be honest, Avon, Canberra's growing. We've got more people in Canberra. We're pushing out into the surrounding regions. We're doing a better job in engaging with schools. We're doing a better job in that awareness. But the flip side is young guys are feeling more lonely. Young guys are disconnected. There's less chance and opportunity for guys that don't have those male role models in their lives. So it's very easy to see why an organisation like Men's Link would grow because of that. I'm not going to say it's because of loneliness or disconnect. I think that's just a group of all sorts of different things that are going on. Canberra getting bigger, as I said, more kids.
Is there pressure on people working with you, on somebody who considers themselves a role model, to make sure your behavior can be modeled?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most blokes think, well, I'm not a role model. I'm not famous. I'm not sporty. I'm not rich. I don't have big guns. I don't have a fast car. So most normal blokes don't have that. Well, we're actually not looking for that. We're just looking for the normal fellas that'll just turn up and just be there to be with a young guy's journey through a couple of years of his life. It doesn't have to be anything special. The most special thing you got to do is commit and just be part and be there for that young guy. The worst thing that we can have is a young guy starts to build trust in that journey, and 6 months in, you're like, no, mate, sorry, I'm a bit too busy. Got to go off and do this. And quite obviously that happens for various reasons, whether it's job, family commitments, okay. But if you've just gone, it's a bit too busy, don't like this young bloke too much, that's devastating for that young fella. So it's nothing special. You don't have to have a fast car. You don't have a big salary. You just have to be a bloke that comes along and commits and is part of that journey.
Because I think the understanding of that evolves, like you rightly said, with age and maturity and experience. Because if I reflect back on my own life, I didn't think I had to be a role model to anybody till we had children, till we started thinking, okay, now what are they learning from our behaviors? Where does a young man learn about what it takes to be a role model?
Probably from their role models, from society. I mean, let's just extrapolate this out. If a young fella's learning from Andrew Tate, that's his role model. Well, it's probably not going to turn out that well. If the young guy's learning to be a role model from a sportsman that has really poor behavior, it's probably not going to turn out that well, And so, I think young guys learn from their role models, from the people they respect. And that's why, in particular, and I refer to it because it's my world, but the sporting codes come down hard on players or athletes that behave poorly. They know those people are out in the community being role models. And that's important to our society. So they want to make sure those athletes are behaving in the way that society expects.
And it's a tough one for sporting codes also, I'm assuming, because you're coming down hard on a sports person, but at the end of the day, you want to build trust in your team. You want to win. Like if I look at the Australian cricket team, and Sandpapergate and whatever happened there, like everyone came and apologized and cried and did all of those things. But the team was weaker. Yeah. We were losing. Yeah. How do you balance that?
I mean, the other example recently is the young fella playing AFL with the homophobic slur. I'm going to be pretty much guarantee that wasn't intent of a homophobic. Like, he knew not to say that afterwards, but it still came out and it's wrong. And that's why they came down pretty hard on him. I can guarantee he's gutted because of that. It's not right. And those guys are held at a higher account, and so they should be. The Sandpapergate, I mean, there's plenty of examples of that. Unfortunately, the cost of winning is held, it's high.
As an elite athlete or sports person, yes, you're training really hard, you're focused on your goal. Do you also get taught what your role is as a role model?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And that's done in a few ways. There's quite a formal process of that. For, in particular, the professional sporting organisations, the football teams and so forth, have a very clear pathway for that. They will also have staff on board. I know the Canberra Raiders have 2 staff on board from various sporting backgrounds that actually actively pursue this, and it's working quite well for them. And another interesting side to this would be with the online gambling. So there's modules that every player and coach and support staff has to complete on a yearly basis to be aware of the online gambling, the performance enhancing drugs. So there's lots of checks and balances for professional sporting codes. Yeah, absolutely.
Ben, you've said it's not about winning the day, it's about winning for a lifetime. Can you unpack that for me?
Well, interestingly, that came. So I was coach athlete to a young guy from Canberra here in 2004 at the Olympic Games, triathlon. He was leading the triathlon race. So Olympic glory was sort of right there in front of us, and he crashed his bike, which is not uncommon in those style races. We see it Tour de France all the time. But that had a pretty devastating effect. He wasn't able to compete at the level he was ready for, and finished in 10th place at the Olympic Games. Now, sitting here today, 10th place, how unreal is that? Just an amazing achievement. At the time, though, we were gutted. Like, we were there to win. That was our only aim, was there to win. We went on a 4-year redemption. So Olympic Games are every 4 years. So 2004, so it was 2008 in Beijing. So we spent the next 4 years chasing redemption. We had to go back and win. We got to that Beijing time frame, and it didn't qualify for the Olympic Games. We're out. Done and dusted. There was no redemption. We were bust ass broke, nothing. What do you do? You've got to have a fair deep look inside yourself and go, what is this all about? And manifest out from that. I ended up writing about my experiences, and the way that started is I wanted to write to my daughter to explain. She was only very young, explain what this journey was, because it was a big deal. So I did that, and that manifested out into a book. So I was able to get this book published. I made a little bit of money, so I was like, wow, this is fantastic, mate. I'm an author. Off we go. But the truth is, what it enabled me to do was reflect and learn and now teach. It wasn't about that victory on the day. It wasn't that one day. It was about how I and we conduct ourselves for a lifetime. Hence, the ability, or not the ability, the time frame, into Men's Link now, and being able to give back to my community that's been so good to me. So it's more than victory on the day, it's victory for a lifetime.
For a young man struggling and at his first counseling session, what's realistic expectation looking like?
Well, it'll be more than one counseling session. It's usually multiple counseling sessions, and it's a journey that is, it's not easy. Firstly, that step to go, I put your hand up and say, yeah, I need help. I want to talk to somebody. It might not be help. It's probably not the right word, but I want to talk to somebody about this. I refer to, sometimes it's situational. It might be, I broke up with my girlfriend. I'm doing some online gambling, or I haven't been to school for 3 weeks and I haven't told mum, all this sort of stuff. So some situational type stuff. It's way better to talk about it. And that will take more than one session. So come in, be honest, be calm. It's a safe space. We're not telling the cops. We're not, nothing like that at all. It's your space, but you and the counsellor. There's lots of privacy not concerns, but there's lots of privacy boundaries around it. Feel trusted, feel supported, feel like it's a safe space to talk to your counsellor and make plans about how to go forward. And the counsellors are really well equipped with all the ability to refer to different things. So whatever the counselling session brings up, that counsellor will have the tools to help that young fella out, whichever direction that needs to go.
For a young man listening to this podcast, if you could leave them with a message, what would that message be?
Silence is deadly. Yeah, it's not weak to speak, and that's on anything. It doesn't matter if you've, crashed the family car or hit a car in a car park and you've come home, own up to it. Tell your mum, tell your dad, whatever. I haven't gone to school for 2 weeks. Just own up to it straight up, okay? Not talking about those sorts of things, it just brews away inside you. And it just, more often than not, makes the situation even worse. So it's better just to get it out, okay? Deal with it in a calm, really clinical type way without emotions being involved, and it usually will work out a lot better for you.
Thank you, Ben, for the work you do. Thank you for the generosity of your time, and thank you for sharing your ideas with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Avon. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A massive thank you to Crown Plaza Canberra for hosting this episode of the podcast. If you are looking for really nice accommodation in close proximity to Canberra CBD, or if you want well-appointed meeting spaces, check out Crown Plaza Canberra. Thank you again.
Content warning for you to consider.